In God we trust, but for everything else, bring data. 360-degree feedback is a great way to know the how aspect of the people. Are the leaders and managers able to communicate to the teams? Like, are they able to get things done? They have the feeling that is my boss preparing me to be a boss?
And how does a stay interview work?
What have made you stay in the organization? What is that positive sentiment? Being a mid-sized company, we believe in build over buy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to season 2 of Close the Loop. It's been an awesome season, I think, with 6 guests so far. Today we have Pooja Rao, who leads HR at Tracxn, a startup based here in Bangalore. And we're going to talk about employee retention and strategies to keep a strong team moving forward with the company. So looking forward to today's episode, and thanks for joining. Hey Pooja, welcome to the episode. I know we've been trying for a while to get you on, and we finally made it happen today. So
it feels like we met yesterday at the event.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So Pooja's been a part of a lot of the events that we've had so far, and really excited to have you. I think would love to. Maybe you can start with the audience and just let them know about a little bit about you and how you got into your role at Tracxn, and then we'll get into talking about employee retention.
Sure. So I'm basically from Bangalore, based out of Bangalore, and I started my journey as a software engineer, having a bachelor's in engineering, and then realized my passion for HR and made the switch in the startup that I was working for. So that's how I made the switch, and cut to today, I have around 11 years experience. And so I'm associated with Tracxn for the last 3 years, taking care of HR operations.
Yeah. And what does that role look like while you've been at Tracxn? What was the maybe mandate early when you joined, and how has that changed over time?
Right. So when I joined, I focused on HR operations, but now the role has evolved to looking at everything to do with employee experience, whether it's employee engagement events or how to improve employee experience on day one. What are the activities done? How can it be reduced? How to make it more effective? With respect to corporate giftings and employee gifting, and how to improve the satisfaction levels, right? So my role has evolved to engagement.
Nice, awesome. I think this is a topic that you are particularly passionate about. So, and we've been wanting to talk about employee retention for a while. I think we've talked on a lot of other categories, but I think we've had so many episodes where we talk about building strong teams, but then how do you keep a strong team with you? And there's a framework around employee retention with some letters. So can you maybe walk us through that?
Yeah, so I made that framework, by the way.
Cool.
So while I was writing, I realized at the bottom, what is the most important? Like if you look at a house of cards, what is the most important is process, right? So when we're building processes, we have to ensure what can be automated to reduce the grunt work so that the teams don't feel it as monotonous and repetitive. So when we build processes to ultimately build systems to ensure that the productivity is taken care of.
Got it. Make sure they're doing work at the right level. We're not wasting time on things that could be automated.
Also, whenever the teams bring projects or ideas, we clearly articulate as why are we bringing this, the reasoning behind suggesting a project. Like, is it improving the efficiency? Is it reducing the cost? Is it having an impact? Right? So that is how the process forms the basis. That's the first P. The second P, as per me, is people. The people, meaning first the leaders, they play a very important role in shaping employee engagement and then ultimately affecting the turnover. So is the culture ingrained in the leaders of the organization so that it cascades down to the ground level? And then the teams and the mid-level managers. So the leaders are responsible for modeling that behavior, and so that the teams can follow suit. So my third P would be the pulse. So everything to do with, we call it NPS, right? Net Promoter Score. So we collect extensive feedback on anything, right? Any initiative, any event, any policy that is rolled out. So that feedback helps us to improve and fix things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the next P would be the purpose, right?
Hmm.
So purpose also shaping it, keeping in mind the generational preferences, right? Like the millennials and the Gen Z. And the next P would be
And I think we'll spend a bunch of time on
performance.
purpose later.
Yeah. So performance, like what metrics are being used, and when you chunk it down, like what is the UPT, unit processing time? How much time does it take?
Yeah.
Like, are you having reasonable output expectation? So map it with the manners and the manpower required,
Yeah.
right? So it should be doable and achievable. So performance
Makes
is
sense.
my last P.
Yeah.
So did
And
I
then
mention 6 Ps?
I think that's 6, yeah. And then on Pulse specifically,
Yeah.
wanted to understand, because even in the roundtable event that we were at earlier,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were talking about Pulse and how do you capture Pulse. So how often do you all do the NPS, and do you do anything to do a smaller version,
Yeah.
like a micro Pulse survey sometime in the year? Any tools that you use for that?
So there is a daily question on how is your day. From that as well, we get certain inputs, like how the team's feeling at the end of the day. Are they stressed out? Have they, extended, or are they having a bad day?
Right.
So we address like multiple low score, we address, but that is at a daily frequency, and monthly surveys, which includes quarterly anonymous surveys. So that gives us insight on the
Nice.
pulse of every
Yeah.
team.
And I think
Yeah.
everyone who implements these things are wondering, how do you make sure these get filled out? How do you drive adoption on some of these tools?
So we send multiple reminders, but also the respective BU heads, we send reminders as to please encourage your team
Have them
to
follow up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we found works really well is when you do a survey like this, really
Right.
quickly following up to say, you spoke and we listened, and here's what's going to come.
Right.
Here's some of the new initiatives now based on your feedback. Just the same way I think with our customers at Loop, right? It's
Yeah.
like, if somebody's filling out on their HR dashboard
Right.
a monthly pulse survey, if they see the change happen, they're much more
Right.
likely to keep giving that
Yeah.
feedback. Let's say performance as a pillar is struggling at the organization. How do you approach performance, and how do you maybe balance it out and think about everything else?
So quote unquote, in God we trust, but for everything else, bring data.
Nice.
So we need data to look at every other P if performance is lagging behind. So for process, we have to analyze if there's any gap for that. And also pulse, people, and purpose can be gauged with the help of these surveys.
Yeah.
Right. Not only surveys, also constant touch points with employees. For example, one-on-one discussions, what has worked for them, what has worked for the team with high satisfaction scores, right? So these things give us input.
I think with this framework, maybe it would be helpful for the audience to hear an example of maybe a time when one of these pillars was struggling. What did that look like? And then what did you do? Were you attacking that pillar directly? Were you working on some of these other things?
So, for example, people, right? 360-degree feedback is a great way to know the how aspect of the people. Like, are the leaders and managers able to communicate well to the teams? Like, what needs to be done? Are they able to get things done? So that gives us way for some training or support that is required.
I feel that some of these are easier to manage than others. From your perspective, what are two of the hardest ones?
What is my peace and mental well-being in being associated with this organization? That is very important to Gen Zs. And for them, they need continuous validation. Like, yes, you're doing well.
So, I mean, I think we all need that.
Yeah. We all need.
I think they're just better about putting their real needs.
Low key about it. They don't tell.
I think Gen Z is just more real about what their needs are, and they're not sort of hiding.
So striking a balance, I think that is most important. And also,
purpose.
Quoting Dave Ulrich here, he's the HR guru. So he comes up with this grid: employee sentiment versus employee value proposition. Right, so it goes like on top is at the bottom is the satisfaction, commitment, and things like that. But on the top, which is the most hardest to achieve, is hope. Hope is that thriving culture, the mindset of thriving and growth, that realistic optimism. So that is the most difficult to achieve, that they have the feeling that is my boss preparing me to be a boss. So this whole purpose.
Because I think the audience can really relate with this pillar of purpose as being hard, but also very powerful. Any examples, either at your own company or other companies, around how you've been able to create that sense of purpose to retain employees?
Something as simple as there is a major process change, but it's not communicated well to the managers. And then those who are executing it are facing difficulty. So this comes up in the survey. So this is a trigger. So we also have one-on-one discussions with the team members who are tenured, and we have this loyalty service. So when they speak in front of an audience, in front of juniors, that I've learned so much in the company.
Nice. You give them a
growth.
platform.
Yeah, cool. So I think that their purpose becomes a motivation for somebody who's just joined.
Yeah. And then I think everyone watching has probably done an exit interview, but not everybody has done a stay interview. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, that's the trend. By the way, I read it somewhere as well.
And how does a stay interview work? How do you
so
deliver?
What works for you, and what have made you stay in the organization? What parameters continue to motivate you, and what is that positive sentiment you need to?
I think that's as important as, a lot of times leadership teams will say, oh my gosh, like dysfunction, lots of attrition. But it's also looking at the people who are staying and why.
Like doubling
down on the wins, right? Yeah.
Right.
I think you had shared earlier a bunch of trends around employee retention, and stay interview was one of them. What are the other kind of trends around employee retention?
So I think having flexibility for the compensation, for the variable pay, if employee can choose what they want, if you can give options, no, I don't want ESOPs, I want something else, for example. Right. So that having been able to do that,
a good thing.
Is a good thing. And other trends, finding a balance in the purpose, that's a constant, that's a constant fight. That striking a balance.
Keeping people motivated, connected to the mission. And maybe specifically, obviously, we as Loop, as an employee benefits company, I think we take interest in that. So how does employee benefits fit into retention? I mean, do you think it's a significant driver? Would an employee leave if you didn't give the right benefits? Or what's that balance?
I mean, there's no immediate returns, right? So when we look at intangible value of an organization, one of the factors is human capability. It's a human capability, again, quoting Dave Rich. It's a mix of leadership, organization, HR, and people, right? So for human capability to grow, to improve that intangible value, we need to have a farmer's mindset. If I can say that. That means sowing today for tomorrow's harvest, right? So what activities or whatever initiatives that are taken to show care, to invest time and effort in people, it might not have immediate returns, but in the long term, it will build that loyalty mindset, right? That, okay, I work with a place that takes care of me. And that sentiment becomes the retention strategy.
Adds to the culture, the sense of care at the company. Nice, And anything you see changing on the, say, employee health and wellness landscape that you're keen to maybe adopt, or something you've adopted as a company?
So what works is maybe if the companies can customize it, whatever the technology platforms offer in terms of health, mental wellness, or financial wellness, for example, if they can customize it based on their larger objectives, and if the employees are able to personalize it based on their individual preferences.
That's something I think we've seen, because technology is good enough now to handle complex enrollments and stuff. We're seeing a lot of really cool stuff on the flexible benefit side of things. So I think we talked about a multi-generational workforce, and we use all these labels and ways to slice and dice our teams and understand them. But at the end of the day, everyone's a unique person. Everyone has their own unique set of motivations. So, and it's impossible for an HR team to say do weekly one-on-ones with everybody and make sure everybody's unique motivations are maxed out all the time. So what strategies can you give maybe to HR teams who feel, hey, we need to scale this, like this needs to impact our 650, 700 employees that we have. How can they kind of scale these 6 Ps across their team?
So considering the generational preferences, some basic infra can be derived upon, right? Like keeping the compensation competitive, and there's a continuous feedback mechanism in place, right? So that's also a motivating factor.
Yeah.
And then
and scalable. You don't need to send. You can target the entire company.
So rewards and recognition. So there's tons of ways in which you can be rewarded now, right? So there's from gadgets to food to spa vouchers. There's customizable platforms available, right? So other than this, what can be done is individually, whenever a trigger like comes up in the survey or in the form of concern, BU heads can look at it, and if at all on a case-to-case basis, if they can be addressed, then definitely we should do it, because if they are among the top performers, and we need to attract talent, retain, and then ensure their learning also continues, right? So that they don't feel stagnated. That's also one of the challenges. So for example, if they're looking at more responsibilities, if they're looking at handling a bigger team, so we can see what can be done, not right away, but at least if we can give them a roadmap, saying we see the potential, but it will happen eventually.
Got it.
If we can give them a roadmap.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because I think at the point where an individual contributor is like really keen to lead a team, then it's something that's worth that bespoke attention and really considering it.
Because that is what is motivating them. But also we need to look at the parity aspect, and if we have a simple hierarchy, we can't bring multiple layers unnecessarily because somebody wants to take up reporting, right?
But,
so we need
so
to
in that case, it's something you need to look at on a case-to-case basis and really understand. No, I think that makes sense. I think the 6 Ps are an amazing framework patented by Pooja Rao today. But I think it's a good framework for HRs to think about all the elements of retention. Any final thoughts that you want to leave the audience with? It's a community of HRs.
I mean, there's no end to the piece, right? And it's driven by the data. So good luck to Loop.
Thank you so much.
I mean, I've been seeing great stuff happening through LinkedIn.
Appreciate it. I think we're doing our best to implement as many of these things as we can for our own team, and then we try to support our customers in doing this, at least from the health and wellness angle. But thanks, Pooja, for joining, and
thank you so
looking
much
forward to
for
the next
having
one.
Me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.